What if I told you that your greatest failure wasn't actually your ending, but your beginning? That the moment you felt everything crumble around you was actually the moment you became capable of building something extraordinary? Right now, you might be sitting in the wreckage of what used to be your life, your dreams, your identity. Maybe you're staring at the pieces wondering if you'll ever be whole again. Maybe you're questioning everything you thought you knew about yourself, about what you're capable of, about whether you have what it takes to start over. I want you to know something. What you're experiencing right now isn't just normal, it's necessary. And what I'm about to share with you will completely change how you see this moment in your life. By the end of our time together, you'll understand why this failure might be the most important thing that ever happened to you. See, there's something profound that happens when we truly understand failure not as an ending, but as a reconstruction. Not as evidence of our inadequacy, but as proof of our courage to try. Not as a reason to quit, but as raw material for something better. Stay with me, because what I'm about to show you has helped thousands of people transform their deepest defeats into their greatest victories, and it's going to help you too. Understanding the terrain. Have you ever noticed how the word failure immediately makes your body tense up? How it carries this weight, this finality, this judgment that feels like it's carved in stone? There's something happening beneath the surface that most of us miss because we're focused on the shame, the disappointment, the fear of what others might think. Let me paint you a picture. Imagine Sarah, a brilliant entrepreneur who just watched her startup collapse after 3 years of pouring everything into it. She's sitting in her empty office, boxes packed, employees gone, dreams apparently dead. The voice in her head is relentless. You're a failure. You wasted everyone's time. You'll never succeed at anything. But here's what Sarah doesn't see yet, what most of us don't see when we're in the thick of it. She's not experiencing failure, she's experiencing feedback. Massive, life-changing, soul-shaking feedback. Think about it this way. When a tree falls in a forest, it doesn't just disappear. It becomes the foundation for new growth. Its nutrients feed the soil, its trunk becomes a bridge for smaller plants, its very decomposition creates the conditions for something even more magnificent to emerge. Your failure isn't different. It's not the end of your story, it's the composting of your old story so something better can grow. But here's where most people get stuck. They focus on the falling, on the crashing, on the immediate devastation. They don't understand that what feels like destruction is actually deconstruction. What feels like dying is actually the shedding of everything that wasn't really you. The pain you're feeling right now? It's not punishment, it's transformation. It's your old self making room for your new self. It's everything that no longer serves you being burned away so the real you can emerge. I know it doesn't feel that way. I know it feels like you're broken, like you're less than you were before, like you've somehow diminished. But what if I told you that you're not broken at all? What if you're actually being broken open? There's a Japanese art form called kintsugi, where broken pottery is repaired with gold. The philosophy behind it is that the breakage and repair are part of the object's history, not something to disguise. The piece becomes more beautiful because it was broken. That's what's happening to you right now. You're being prepared for your golden repair, the wisdom within. Let me tell you about Marcus, a man who lost everything twice in his life. The first time was when his marriage fell apart and he lost his house, his kids, his sense of identity as a husband and father. He was 45 years old and felt like his life was over. For months, he wandered through his days like a ghost. He'd wake up in his tiny apartment, go to work at a job he hated, come home to silence, and repeat. The weight of his failure pressed down on him every single day. But then something interesting happened. In the quiet of his empty apartment, away from all the noise and expectations and roles he'd been playing, Marcus started to hear something he hadn't heard in years, his own voice. Not the voice that said he should be successful, or that he should have a perfect marriage, or that he should be someone other than who he was. His actual voice, the voice that had been buried under decades of trying to be what others expected. And that voice was saying something surprising. I've been living someone else's life. Marcus realized that his marriage hadn't failed because he was a failure. His marriage had failed because he had been trying to be someone he wasn't. He'd been following a script written by society, by his parents, by his fears, instead of following his own authentic path. The second time Marcus lost everything was different. He'd built a successful business, found love again, seemed to have figured it all out. But then the economy crashed, his business went under, and his relationship crumbled under the stress. This time though, Marcus didn't see it as failure, he saw it as redirection. Because here's what he'd learned from his first fall: when everything external gets stripped away, what remains is your essence, and your essence is indestructible. The first time, Marcus thought he needed to rebuild his life exactly as it was before. The second time, he understood that he needed to build a life that aligned with who he actually was. This is the secret that transforms everything about failure. It's not a verdict on your worth, it's a revelation of your authenticity. When everything falls apart, you're not losing yourself, you're finding yourself. When all the external structures collapse, you're not left with nothing. You're left with everything that actually matters. Most people spend their entire lives building elaborate structures on foundations that aren't truly theirs. They construct careers that don't fulfill them, relationships that don't nourish them, identities that don't express them. And when those structures inevitably crack under the pressure of inauthenticity, they think they failed.
But they haven't failed. They've been given the gift of starting over with wisdom. The revelation. Here's what transforms everything about rebuilding after failure. The goal isn't to get back to where you were. The goal is to become who you actually are. Think about a river that's been dammed for decades. When that dam finally breaks, the water doesn't try to recreate the artificial lake. It finds its natural course. It carves new channels, creates new landscapes, flows with a power and purpose that was always there but had been contained. Your failure is the breaking of your dam. Your authentic self is the river that's been waiting to flow. While most people see failure as proof that they're not good enough, true wisdom sees failure as proof that they're brave enough to try, conscious enough to recognize when something isn't working, and powerful enough to start again. Here's the deeper truth. Every person who has ever built something meaningful, who has ever created something lasting, who has ever lived with genuine fulfillment, has failed spectacularly at something. Not despite their success, but because of it. Failure isn't the opposite of success, it's the raw material of success. When J.K. Rowling was rejected by 12 publishers before Harry Potter was accepted, she wasn't experiencing failure, she was experiencing refinement. Each rejection was information, feedback, guidance toward the perfect match. When Steve Jobs was fired from Apple, the company he'd co-founded, he wasn't experiencing defeat, he was experiencing redirection. That forced departure led him to create Pixar and eventually return to Apple with the wisdom and experience that made him legendary. When Oprah was fired from her first television job for being too emotionally invested in her stories, she wasn't experiencing setback, she was experiencing preparation. That very quality that got her fired became the foundation of her unprecedented success. The pattern is always the same. What looks like failure from the outside is actually alignment from the inside. What feels like ending is actually beginning. What seems like punishment is actually preparation. But here's what most people miss. The rebuilding isn't about getting back to where you were. It's about becoming who you were always meant to be. Your failure stripped away everything that wasn't essentially you. Now you get to build from your authentic foundation. Now you get to create something that actually fits who you are instead of who you thought you should be. This is why failure is so transformative. It's not just about learning resilience or developing grit, though those are valuable. It's about discovering your true nature and building a life that expresses it. The foundation system. Now that you understand the true nature of failure and rebuilding, let's talk about how to actually do it. There are 4 foundational elements that will guide your reconstruction, and each one builds upon the last. Foundation 1. Inner awareness. The first foundation is developing deep awareness of who you actually are, beneath all the roles, expectations, and identities you've been carrying. This isn't about positive thinking or affirmations. This is about honest, compassionate self-examination.
Start by asking yourself, what parts of my old life felt authentic? What parts felt like I was performing? When did I feel most like myself? When did I feel most disconnected from myself? Create space for silence every day. Not meditation necessarily, though that's wonderful if it works for you. Just silence. Turn off the noise, sit with yourself, and listen. What comes up? What thoughts arise? What feelings surface? What desires emerge? Pay attention to what energizes you and what drains you. Notice what makes you feel expanded and what makes you feel contracted. Your body knows the difference between authentic and inauthentic choices. Start trusting its wisdom. Keep a journal of your observations, not a diary of events, but a record of your inner landscape. What patterns do you notice? What themes emerge? What truths are trying to surface? This isn't about judging what you discover. It's about witnessing it with compassion. You're not trying to fix anything yet. You're simply getting to know the person you're rebuilding. Foundation 2. Aligned action. The second foundation is learning to take action that aligns with your authentic self rather than action that tries to force outcomes or meet external expectations. This is radically different from how most people approach rebuilding. Instead of frantically trying to recreate what was lost, you're going to move slowly, deliberately, and in harmony with your true nature. Start small. Instead of making grand plans or setting ambitious goals, begin with tiny actions that feel genuinely right. If you're drawn to writing, write a paragraph. If you're called to help others, volunteer for an hour. If you feel pulled toward a new skill, take one lesson. The key is to pay attention to how these actions feel in your body. Do they create energy or drain it? Do they feel like expansion or contraction? Do they connect you to something larger than yourself or make you feel isolated? Let your actions be experiments rather than commitments. You're not trying to build your new life overnight. You're exploring what wants to emerge through you. This foundation also means learning to say no to things that don't align with your authentic self, even if they seem like good opportunities. Every yes to something that isn't truly you is a no to something that is. Foundation 3. Patient cultivation. The third foundation is embracing the natural timing of growth and transformation. This is perhaps the most challenging foundation for people rebuilding after failure because there's often urgency, pressure, and anxiety around getting back on track quickly. But authentic rebuilding doesn't happen on external timelines. It happens in natural rhythms, like seasons changing or seeds growing. You can't force a tree to bear fruit before it's ready, and you can't force your new life to manifest before it's time. This foundation requires developing trust in the process even when you can't see the results yet. It means understanding that periods of apparent inactivity are actually periods of deep preparation, like the time a seed spends underground before it breaks through the soil. Create rituals that honor this natural timing. Maybe it's a morning practice where you set intentions for the day without attachment to outcomes. Maybe it's an evening reflection where you acknowledge the small progress you've made without judging the distance still to go. Learn to find fulfillment in the process itself rather than just a destination. Each day that you live authentically, each choice that you make from your true self, each moment that you honor your genuine nature is a victory worth celebrating. This foundation also means being gentle with yourself during the difficult moments. Rebuilding is not linear. There will be setbacks, confusion, and moments when you question everything. These aren't signs that you're failing again, they're signs that you're growing. Foundation 4. Natural expression. The fourth foundation is allowing your authentic self to express itself in the world without trying to control how it's received or what outcomes it creates. This is about moving from performing to being, from trying to impress to choosing to express, from seeking approval to sharing your gifts. Your failure has given you something precious, the knowledge that living for external validation is ultimately unsatisfying. Now you get to live for internal fulfillment. Now you get to create, contribute, and connect from a place of authenticity rather than anxiety. This foundation requires courage because authentic expression is vulnerable. When you share your true self with the world, you risk rejection, criticism, and misunderstanding. But you also open yourself to genuine connection, meaningful contribution, and deep satisfaction. Start by expressing yourself in small, safe ways. Share an honest thought with a trusted friend. Create something that reflects your authentic vision. Speak up for something you truly believe in. Offer your genuine gifts to the world without attachment to how they're received. Notice how different this feels from the expression that came from your old, inauthentic self. There's a quality of ease, of rightness, of natural flow when you're expressing from your true nature. This foundation also means learning to receive feedback without taking it as a judgment of your worth. When you're expressing authentically, some people will resonate with you and others won't. That's not a reflection of your value. It's simply the natural sorting that happens when people show up as themselves. The integration process. Now that you understand the 4 foundations, let's talk about how to integrate them into a cohesive rebuilding process. This isn't about following a rigid timeline or checking off boxes. It's about creating a sustainable, authentic approach to reconstruction. Phase 1. Clearing. The first phase is clearing away the remnants of your old life that no longer serve you. This isn't just about physical clearing, though that can be part of it. It's about emotional, mental, and spiritual clearing. Start by identifying what you're still carrying from your old life that needs to be released. This might be beliefs about who you should be, expectations about what success looks like, or stories about what your failure means. Write down everything you're ready to let go of. Be specific. Instead of, "I want to let go of fear," write, "I want to let go of the fear that I'm not smart enough to succeed in business." Instead of, "I want to release the past," write, "I want to release the story that my divorce means I'm bad at relationships." For each item on your list, create a simple release ritual. This doesn't have to be elaborate. It could be as simple as writing it on a piece of paper and burning it safely, or saying it out loud and then taking a deep breath to let it go. The key is to approach this clearing with compassion for yourself. You're not getting rid of parts of yourself. You're releasing patterns and beliefs that were never truly yours to begin with. Phase 2. Exploring. The second phase is exploring who you are when you're not trying to be anyone else. This is a time of experimentation, discovery, and gentle investigation. Try new things, not because you think you should or because they might lead to success, but because they intrigue you. Take classes, read books, have conversations, visit places, engage with ideas that spark your curiosity. Pay attention to what energizes you. Notice what makes you lose track of time. Observe what makes you feel most alive. These are clues to your authentic nature. This phase also includes exploring your relationship with failure itself. How do you talk to yourself when things don't go as planned? What stories do you tell yourself about what failure means? How can you develop a more compassionate, curious relationship with setbacks? Remember, this is exploration, not evaluation. You're not trying to figure out if you're good at something or if it could be profitable. You're simply discovering what wants to emerge through you. Phase 3. Building. The third phase is beginning to build your new life based on what you've discovered about yourself. This is where the foundations we discussed earlier become practical tools. Start creating structures that support your authentic self. This might mean changing your daily routine to include more of what energizes you. It might mean seeking out relationships that encourage your genuine expression. It might mean making career choices based on alignment rather than just security. Build slowly and consciously. Instead of rushing to recreate the external markers of success, focus on creating internal conditions for fulfillment. Instead of trying to prove yourself to others, focus on honoring yourself. This phase requires patience because authentic building takes time. You're not just constructing a new life, you're becoming a new person. You're not just changing what you do, you're changing who you are. Phase 4, expressing. The fourth phase is sharing your authentic self with the world in whatever way feels most natural to you. This might be through your work, your relationships, your creative expression, or your service to others. The key is to express from a place of fullness rather than emptiness, from abundance rather than need, from joy rather than desperation. When you've done the inner work of the previous phases, your expression becomes natural and effortless. This doesn't mean it's easy. Authentic expression still requires courage, vulnerability, and persistence, but it comes from a different place. It comes from who you are rather than who you think you should be. Advanced principles. As you move through this rebuilding process, there are some advanced principles that can deepen and accelerate your transformation.
The principle of paradox. One of the most powerful principles in rebuilding after failure is understanding that often the opposite of what we think we need is what we actually need. When we fail, our instinct is to try harder, move faster, control more. But authentic rebuilding often requires trying less, moving slower, and controlling nothing. When we're afraid of being vulnerable, we often need more vulnerability. When we're terrified of being rejected, we often need to risk more rejection. When we're desperate to succeed, we often need to become unattached to success. This principle helps you move toward what you're avoiding because that's often where your greatest growth lies. Your failure has already taken you to your edge. Now you get to explore what's beyond that edge. The principle of seasons. Another powerful principle is understanding that rebuilding, like all growth, happens in seasons. There are times for clearing, times for planting, times for tending, and times for harvesting. There are also times for rest, for reflection, for letting things lie fallow. Most people try to be in harvest season all the time. They want constant growth, constant progress, constant results. But authentic rebuilding requires honoring all the seasons, including the ones that don't look productive from the outside. Learn to recognize what season you're in and what that season requires. If you're in a clearing season, focus on release. If you're in a planting season, focus on new beginnings. If you're in a tending season, focus on nurturing what's growing. If you're in a harvest season, focus on enjoying the fruits of your authentic labor. The principle of alignment. The final advanced principle is learning to use alignment as your primary decision-making tool. Instead of making choices based on what you think you should do or what might lead to success, you learn to make choices based on what feels most aligned with your authentic self. This requires developing sensitivity to the subtle signals your body and intuition are constantly sending you. It means learning to distinguish between the voice of your authentic self and the voice of your conditioning. When you're considering a decision, ask yourself, does this feel expanding or contracting? Does it create energy or drain it? Does it connect me to something larger than myself or make me feel isolated? Does it feel like I'm moving toward myself or away from myself? The answers to these questions will guide you toward choices that support your authentic rebuilding rather than choices that recreate your old patterns. The ongoing journey. As we near the end of our time together, I want to leave you with this understanding. Rebuilding after failure isn't a destination you reach, it's a way of living you embrace. The person you're becoming through this process isn't just someone who has recovered from failure. You're someone who has learned to live authentically, to express genuinely, to create from a place of truth rather than fear. This means that your relationship with failure itself transforms. Instead of seeing it as something to avoid at all costs, you begin to see it as valuable feedback, as course correction, as invitation to greater authenticity.
You stop trying to create a life that's failure-proof and start creating a life that's meaningful. You stop trying to be invulnerable and start being courageously vulnerable. You stop trying to control outcomes and start trusting the process. This doesn't mean you become reckless or that you stop caring about results. It means you become more skilled at taking authentic risks, more resilient in the face of setbacks, and more creative in your approach to challenges. The truth is, you'll probably experience failure again, not because you're destined to fail, but because you're destined to grow. And growth requires reaching beyond what you know, attempting what you've never attempted, becoming who you've never been. But now you know something that most people never learn. Failure isn't the opposite of success, it's the pathway to authenticity. It's not something that happens to you, it's something that happens through you, for you, as you. Every time you fall down, you have the opportunity to get back up as more of who you really are. Every time something doesn't work out, you have the chance to discover what does work for your authentic self. Every time you experience disappointment, you have the invitation to connect with deeper fulfillment. This is the gift your failure has given you, the knowledge that you are not your achievements, you are not your possessions, you are not your roles or your reputation. You are something much more essential, much more resilient, much more valuable than any external success or failure. You are the consciousness that experiences all of these things. You are the awareness that witnesses all of these changes. You are the life force that continues to flow regardless of external circumstances. And that essence of who you are is indestructible. It cannot fail because it is not trying to succeed. It cannot be damaged because it is not trying to be perfect. It cannot be lost because it is not trying to be found. It simply is, and you are it. So as you rebuild your life, remember that you're not really rebuilding at all. You're simply allowing what was always true about you to emerge more clearly. You're not becoming someone new, you're becoming more authentically yourself. The person you're becoming through this process is the person you were always meant to be. The life you're creating is the life that was always waiting for you to be brave enough to live it. Your failure wasn't a detour from your path. It was your path. It was exactly what you needed to strip away everything that wasn't essentially you so that what is essentially you could finally shine. And now it's time to let it shine. Not perfectly, not without risk, not without the possibility of future failures, but authentically, courageously, and with the deep satisfaction that comes from living as who you actually are. The world needs what you have to offer, not the version of you that tries to be what everyone else expects, but the version of you that has the courage to be authentic, the wisdom to embrace failure as teacher, and the commitment to rebuild from the ground up. This is your time. This is your moment. This is your beginning. Welcome to the authentic life that's been waiting for you all along.